help women save lives and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. When she just came out, she told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. And we are off to a fast start to the video podcast. So we have increased our podcast downloads by 70% with the audio and just the addition of video. A lot of people coming in hot in 2023 to do more to end abortion where they live in this post-Roe America. So thank you for the feedback. And we've gotten good and bad feedback. We are appreciative of the good and we're ignoring the bad because it's the responsible thing to do. Not at all. We're making adjustments. So we appreciate the feedback. We're definitely getting feedback today. So be sure, if this doesn't apply to you, the topic today, you are a liar and you're self-delusional and you need help. Everyone will be able to relate on some level, whether you have children or not, whether you're pro-choice, whether you're pro-life, you will relate to today's podcast topic as Steve, Carlin, and I cover our own top 8 parenting disasters. And so we hope that we can shed wisdom on you from hard lessons learned. And with everything going on, we've had a lot of drama. We've got CVS, we've got Walgreens doing abortions now, Rite Aid threw their name in to select locations. They're going to start doing abortions. We've had all the freedom of speech stuff. We'll do a whole podcast on what is happening and happened in Philadelphia with Mark Houck. We'll have a dedicated podcast for that. But we wanted to bring a smile to your face today on the 40 Days for Life podcast by discussing this important topic of the 8 funniest parenting disasters. And somebody who has had a few parenting disaster, but is not a disaster himself, is Mr. Steve Carlin, who joins us from Madison, Wisconsin. Steve, how are you?
Oh, very charitable. Yes, I'm glad to know that I'm not the disaster. It's my naughty kid's fault.
Yes. Yeah. Today. So some of these, I have older kids, so I'm not naming names on some of my examples. Steve is.
Yes.
Your oldest are boys. That's kind of different. So I'm really looking forward to that. We actually don't know what each other are going to say. We just have these topics that include, well, I'll let the listener and the viewer know. We're going to cover scenarios when our kids have been rude. That's never happened.
Never.
When kids won't eat their food, when we're an incompetent first-time parent, when kids get sick, this will be a very dark, sad one. When kids learn how to escape, I think I'm going to win that one, Steve.
Oh, can't wait.
When your kids are bad at church, and we'll talk about angry lady at church who glares at you because she hates kids, and we'll also talk about annoying, stupid parents who won't take their kids out of church. So we'll have a balancing act with that. We'll have when we're potty training. I'm definitely winning that. I'm gonna win that if somebody beats me on mine, you get a free copy of What to Say When. And then obviously when we travel. So Steve, there was a podcast, and by the way, thank you for the response in 2023. We're up 70%. and the podcast. So we're pumped. This is great. We'll try to continue to give you solid, irreplaceable, unforgettable content. But Steve, we mentioned a while back something about travel. Somebody emailed us and said, how do you travel with 8 kids?
One of our question and answer podcasts that we did. Yeah.
That was it. And I answered and had sort of these rules. You have to be able to drive in one day. These are rules learned over time. Okay. So you got to be able to drive in one day. Anyways, we have like this standard. Travel for me isn't as hard because my bladder is the size of a lima bean. So I'm like, kids, you got to go to the bathroom. Oh, great. But we got a lot of feedback on that. Like that was really helpful. So we decided to expand that, make it funny, and talk about the 8 disasters that we've had that are funny in parenting.
All fun categories, all real experiences. And like you mentioned, Sean, it's been kind of a heavy time. Roe's overturned, and we've talked about the real work begins now, and the real work is beginning now. So we'll take a little interlude here in between the pharmacy abortions and the campaign starting, and we'll have a laugh or two. These are things we can laugh about now. We weren't laughing about them when they happened, though.
One of yours, I do know one is coming. And I don't even know why you're putting yourself through it and talking about it, because it is literally every parent's nightmare. By the way, nothing on here will be very like dark or serious, like one of our kids getting cancer or something. I want to do a little disclaimer. Some tragic, this isn't the tragedy. This is the funniest things parenting. And one of Steve's funniest things is only funny now, and I don't even think it's funny. I'm not sure we should talk about it. I don't want to jinx ourselves. It's just one of those things where you got to be careful when you approach it, because it can infiltrate your family. And anyways, I'm looking forward to that, Steve, but you're a great man for sharing it with the audience. I was there. I witnessed it. It was a disaster. And what number is that? That's number 4. When kids get sick. Steve's going to own that one.
That's when I wish we had masks. I'll tell you that.
Is that 2016?
2016.
Pre-COVID. Back when it was normal to see people without a mask. Okay. Before we get to this, we have some feedback on a free speech issue, if I'm remembering correctly.
You got that right. Subject heading Nicola Sturgeon, who I know we all love very much. If you don't remember Nicola, she is what did she else say? She's basically kind of just the psychopathic leader of Scotland and looking to ban 40 days for life. And she knows.
To her credit, she owns it, Steve. To her credit, she says, I want to ban 40 days for life.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's not like she's not hiding it. So for that perspective, I really appreciate her.
The cards are on the table. And you know who else is putting her cards on the table is Agnes, who is writing from Scotland. She says, Dear Sean and Steve, love the podcast, longtime listener in Scotland, and enjoyed your New Year's resolutions episodes. I thought about applying to join a vigil, but I was too anxious due to our deeply feminist First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and her determination to put abortion rights at the center of everything. Since listening to the New Year episodes, I am determined that I will proudly stand outside clinics with signs this year, as long as it's legal. God bless, Agnes. So God bless you, Agnes. That's great. I'm glad you put your fear aside and you're going out and you're taking a stand. And that's the way that we preserve our rights. And that's the way we preserve the lives of children who are in danger of abortion. So good job.
Absolutely. And great name you have, Agnes. So God bless you. Thank you for your courage. It is hard. I think we can relate to that. We've had the FBI raiding houses. They've admitted that they've targeting. And just recently, in the midst of Mark Houck's trial, they finally pressed charges against somebody who firebombed and attacked a pregnancy resource center. I'm sure it's not a coincidence that it was during his trial and they're getting all this, flack for it. But anyways, this is an important email to read before we get into the funny stuff, because be not afraid. We cannot be afraid. We're about to host our first leader training in Poland. We'll have our European leaders and our African leaders in Poland in February. It's cheap to do it in February because it'll be like 4 degrees. So people rolling their eyes while we're doing it in February. That's why. It's a great way to save money. But we have a lot of leaders coming. And of course, Steve, that's John Paul II territory. Will be in Krakow. And he is known throughout his papacy for his phrase being, "Be not afraid." And we really need that. He wasn't. He spoke about the dignity of the unborn person and said that every nation is judged on how they treat their most vulnerable, especially the unborn. And when he said that at a rainy Denver airport in 1994, Bill and Hillary Clinton were standing 5 feet from him. So he was not afraid. He led by example. And Agnes, you were leading by example. And we ought not cower to our government because our countries are not our governments. We are. We are. And so that in a democracy, that's what you're supposed to have is the people. And so we can stand up to abortion. We can go out there. We can go out there peacefully, prayerfully, as we should, and assemble and pray and save lives. And, you know, there's 23,000 women that we know of that are very grateful that we're doing that, and we'll continue to do it. So, and we'll continue to close abortion facilities in the post-Roe world. And as a reminder, as we close out January, not only has this been a record month for the podcast, but also we are now less than a month out from the Spring 40 Days for Life campaign. As a reminder, you can apply to lead a campaign. If you don't have an abortion facility or your abortion facility is already covered, you can lead a campaign in front of a CVS or a Walgreens. If your Rite Aid does RU46 abortions now, you can certainly do that. But those are going to be fun. We've had them pouring in. So be sure to go to 40daysforlife.com. We are extending applications, obviously, because even in our predicting how crazy the world will get in a post-Roe world, we didn't predict that CVS and Walgreens would insert themselves as the largest abortion chains in America. So we switched that. Applications are still open if you want to do that. So go to the website. Okay. The top 8 funniest parenting disasters. And Steve, we should start off by saying, number 1, there is nothing better than having children. There's nothing more rewarding. It is I feel just absolutely blessed that I have not only a wife who loves me, but our 8 beautiful children. Everybody, for the most part, gets along. That may be questionable after this podcast, but it's just a lot of fun, Steve. And there's nothing better than seeing your children fall in love with each other.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. My parents said that when we were kids, they loved seeing, the love that we had as siblings. And I found out she's right. She's 100% right now that I'm a parent. And I find that each new kid we're blessed with allows me to sort of appreciate all the other kids we're blessed with in a new light, because you see their different gifts and the different things that they bring to the world. And, I've heard people say before, I don't know if I could have more kids. I don't know if I have enough love to go around. Having kids just multiplies your love. And these stories that we're going to share, they're infuriating in the moment, or they can bring us to the brink of madness in the moment. And 10 minutes later, or at most a day later, you're laughing about them and you're telling your friends about them. So they're really not that bad. I always hate when you hear kind of like these Gen Z people like, and that's why I'm never having kids. I don't want any part of that mess. The mess is beautiful, and the mess is a lot of fun. And the mess, even some of these things that my kids have done, probably yours too, Sean, but I can't speak for them. I can't condone it, but I can appreciate it.
Yeah. I remember this is one time we went to this fast food place. We were traveling. This isn't on my list, Steve, but it was really sad. And you mentioned Gen Z, but this was only maybe 2 years ago. We had all 8, and the kids line up and they order. And everybody goes through the line and they order. And then I get to the front, and this girl's probably 17 or 18. I mean, she's super young. And she's like, "Are all these kids yours?" And I go, yeah. And she goes, "I would absolutely hate to be you. I mean, how much does it suck to be you?" And she
Wow.
was dead serious for a 17-year-old, And I said, it doesn't. It's awesome. And that's kind of a sad statement when you think about it. Like, these are my kids. Like, I laughed. And she said, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have said that. It was just kind of like, I think the culture is like, oh my God, I'm so glad I don't have kids, and all that stuff that it can kind of get in your mind. And when you really think about it, all you hear are the bad stories in the news. But I don't know anyone who really, really regrets having their children who doesn't have like something wrong with them and is on Twitter, So it is the absolute best. And with that said, we will illustrate today how it is not free and in a comical way. Obviously, we all have real sufferings in our lives, and many of you have been through a great loss, whether it's loss of a family member, a child, or sickness, or whatever. That is not this podcast. This is the funny things that we get to endure on the journey of life. So our first topic, Steve.
When your kids are rude, and I think we should have that McDonald's worker, whoever it was, her parents should come on and they can tell that story that you just told, because that was very rude.
I'm not even going to say the fast food chain because I love it. And it's usually like wonderful, God-fearing people. And this was just, one bad experience. So I'm not even going to say it.
All right. So I can lead off.
Are you going
on this
first
one.
or am I going?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it, because the symposium, by the way, everybody sign up for the 40 Days for Life symposium this summer, 40daysforlife.com/post-row symposium. My family, I brought my family to the first post-row symposium. Sorry, not the first post-row symposium, the first pre-row symposium back in 2016. And since then, I've had leaders and others say, you should bring your family. There's a reason my family has not been to the symposium since 2016. When we did the first one in Orlando, I went and sort of paired it at the end of the week. I went and visited our wonderful leader in the St. Petersburg, Tampa area. Her name is Sabrina. She's led for a long time. And she wanted me to go speak at an early campaign kickoff event. So I went and I brought my family, and she invited us all to their home for dinner. And we had a lovely time together. We had dinner and the kids played together. And my son, John Paul, was 3 years old at the time. And as 3-year-olds are wont to do, there was some dispute over toys, and had to be broken up. And I was kind of ashamed and embarrassed, but it comes with the territory. Nobody's terribly surprised. So we have a lovely time together. I go to the event. It's time to part ways. My family and I are saying goodbye. And I said, thank you so much, Sabrina. And she said, maybe we can do this again. And I said, yeah, maybe my son will be a little more, he won't be so naughty next time. And John Paul, who learned to speak kind of on the early end, said very eloquently at 3 years old, what? Are you kidding me? I'm not being rude. They're the ones that are being rude. So we dragged him out of the room, and that was our our departure from Sabrina's house.
They're the ones being rude.
Yeah. What? Are you kidding me?
Okay. Mine on this. So there's two extremes. Number one, I have two girls. They don't do it anymore, but I had a daughter who would just, this is terrible because me and Mary Lisa are loud mouths. Like, we're both loud people. We talk a lot. But one of our daughters would come like in a social situation and just talk the whole time. And it was kind of like, the other people are like, it's so awesome. She's so articulate. And she was, but it was the amount that she was saying without stopping. And so this is like the kettle, so it's, that was a little problem. Or the other extreme, which is Mumbling Boys. Like, what is your name? Shake my hand, all that. And it's little. My older kids don't do it, but mainly the boys. Like, when they're little, they're like introduce themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Drives me crazy. Okay, and we're big yes sir, yes ma'am people. Okay,
we
but
had Sorry, go ahead.
That's just leading up. Okay, so Bernadette, who is
we're naming names after all.
Yeah. Well, I'll name her because she'll be like, yeah, I don't care. You can talk about that on the podcast. So awkwardly confident, Steve. She's 11 now. Very confident, always has been. Extremely talented. My older girls joke like, we're glad we won't be here when you're in high school because you would just like make us insecure. Bernadette, just no filter. Got a little Trump to her. We've tried to tame that. Not like her older sisters, not like her younger sisters, truly the middle child. So she's in the second grade And this is when we kind of noticed something was wrong. So she won Student of the Month for like the school.
It's a good start. It's a good start.
It's awesome. Like everything's good. Like she's not like getting in trouble, but her teachers are telling us I go home and call my mom and tell her stories about Bernadette. So they announce it. It's a surprise. So Mary Lisa and I get an email, and we go to the school, and she gets Student of the Month, and it's like awesome. And she walks up and she shakes hand and grabs it and kind of takes the picture and sits down. And we're at dinner that night. We're like, we're always praising the older kids. So this was like, we're pouring it on. Like, that's awesome. And she goes, well, I knew I was going to get the award. And we said, well, your teacher, did she tell you? They really don't tell the students. And she goes, no, but I mean, look around. Who else would get it? I mean, I deserved it. I mean, I was the Student of the Month. And so, of course, the older girls, Bridget and Bailey, are like, Bernadette, that is not ladylike. That is not how you accept an award. You accept it in humility. And she just like rolls her eyes.
Yeah.
So
that girl's going places.
I don't know. So we're working on that.
We had a sort of a fun, horrifying story. I'm glad I wasn't there for this. My son, Peter, my oldest now, he's older and I will name names. He was, I don't know how little he was, but our previous bishop who passed away, wonderful man, Bishop Robert Morlino, he would do whatever we wanted for 40 Days for Life. I was on the road visiting a 40 Days for Life campaign somewhere, but my wife took the rest of our family, small family at the time, out to a 40 Days for Life event. Bishop Morlino spoke, and he's just kind of making small talk before he gives his official remarks. And he loved Peter. He's like, oh, Peter, this is, great to see a young man here. And he's got his bishop hat on. He's like, maybe someday you'll be wearing one of these. What do you think about that? And Peter loudly, for all 200 people there to hear, says, I don't know. I think I'd look like a tool.
Oh my gosh. Did that happen? That's the mitre. He's wearing his mitre.
He's wearing his mitre. Peter said he looked like a tool. I don't think Bishop Merlino quite understood what he said because he's little and the words don't make a whole lot of sense. But Laura called me that night and said, I wish that like other people understood. And she said, I wish that the ground would have opened up and swallowed us all whole.
Absolutely. And people should know, whether you're Catholic or not, Bishop Merlino, just a pro-life, wonderful man, great bishop, God rest his soul. And huge fan of 40 Days for Life, handled all the crazy Catholic politicians, respectfully, but definitely put them in their place. He's just a wonderful guy. So it's just like, he's like one of the best bishops in the country. Oh my gosh. I'd never heard that story. You got me on that. I'd look like a tool. Well, next question. Okay. When your kids won't eat what they're fed. So mine is a little short on this. I'll name it now because he didn't do it. So Sheamus, when he was little, he's 15 now. He just wouldn't eat. He was tiny. And then he would attack something, like something good, Steve. Like he's not picky. Like he'd have like jalapeno, habanero, spicy beef fajitas with guacamole. Like when he's like 3 or 4. And he would eat like 3 of them.
Good man.
And then he wouldn't eat for like a whole day. So he was like a snake. We started calling him a snake because we'd worry. My father-in-law's a physician. He's like, he gets hungry, he's going to eat. But it was just this awkward, like he was a bear preparing for hibernation. And so the inconsistency. The whole thing with us is if you don't eat it, you don't like, if you don't like it, you don't eat it. And you got to get hungry enough and all that. With the little kids, like our little 4, I think we've gotten a little weak on that in an area where there's just the perpetual snacks, right? Nobody's actually having a meal. They're like having like 27 different little, like half a snack throughout the day, like half of 27 different snacks and like the wrappers everywhere, all that. And that's getting out of control with age. So we have learned that when you threaten to remove the snacks from the little kids, I mean, you might as well take the gold out of Fort Knox. I mean, not getting a snack is like a meteor hitting the earth for our younger 4 kids. It's like the worst possible thing that could ever happen on earth. It doesn't matter about Russia and Ukraine and nuclear war, all that stuff. Them not getting a snack that they want is the end of the world. So we use that against them to get them to eat meals.
That's a good strategy. I've done a little bit of the you're not leaving the table until you finish your dinner. I mean, if you're full, that's one thing. But when you're just like, I don't like the way that looks, so I'm not eating it, that's a different story. And, I picked on my mom before for her odd food interests, which included the rutabagas at Thanksgiving, but it's not all bad. My mom makes this food. Her family is Polish. It's called jajeczka. I don't know. I've never heard of it. I've never seen it anywhere else. I tried to Google the ways I thought you would spell it to find out what it actually is and what it's all about. But the best I can describe is imagine sort of like pancakes, but like with eggs. So you're mixing eggs and flour and bacon, and it comes out in like kind of a pancake consistency. It's awesome. There's nothing controversial about it whatsoever. There's nothing that you would look at it and be like, oh, that looks weird. I don't like it, or I don't like the texture, anything like that.
Do you put syrup on it?
You can put syrup on it. You can put jam on it. Very good. But my daughter Teresa had never had it before. So she's like 5 and you're not leaving. An hour and a half had passed. Finally, we're like, look, open your mouth. We're putting this, you got like 1 bite left. We're putting it in your mouth. She sat there with that bite in her mouth for 3 hours at the table. So we're talking now like 4+ hours sitting at the table. And as my wife pointed out,
stone cold.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you don't like it, the worst part is having it in your mouth. Just swallow it, get it over with. But she was that stubborn. So that was our visit to Grandma's house.
That's impressive. I mean,
Yeah,
she's
it's
just like sitting there
frightening.
like, yeah, you blink first, Dad.
Yeah.
It's like an old Western like showdown. Like
Yeah.
she's a Doc Holliday.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't do the whistle thing, but the do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how old was she? 3?
I want to say she was like 4. I don't know, 4 or 5. I can't remember. It was older than she should have been, but still not at the age of reason. We found that out that day.
Yeah, not at the age of reason. Okay. The first time you were an incompetent first-time parent. I like that. Not the only time, but the first time you were an incompetent parent. And we're not talking about like, you know how you're just like walking on eggshells when you have your first, newborn. Part of it is you don't know how to hold a newborn, and so you're just, I know for me, and my oldest was a girl, so I'm just like, I don't want to break her. I don't want anything to go wrong. And then, by the time you have 3 or 4 or 5 kids, it's just like, you get it. You know how to hold a newborn and you're holding up the 2-year-old by their shirt. But, okay. So mine on this, I sort of, I over prepared. Okay. So we're all ready. We don't know we're having a girl. It's our first baby. Bridget is born. One of the greatest days of my life. It's January 21st. I'm speaking at Planned Parenthood that morning, led a march that morning. Fortunately, Mary Lisa's OBGYN was next to us. So when she called me and said, I'm going into labor, the doctor was like, we got about 4 hours. We can finish the march. Just finish your talk. So I went up and spoke, and then he and I went to the hospital. So we go and we have Bridget, and it's awesome. And Mary Lisa's already gotten all the stuff. Like, we have the crib. She's the most organized person in the world. So Mary Lisa's prepared the home, but she's like, I need a few things from Walmart. And, it was like diapers and, just some basic things. I forget what it was, but it was like $23 worth of stuff. Right.
You came home with queso, didn't you?
Oh no, that would have been what I would have thought I would have done. And part of it is because I had Freebird's burrito before she was born, and so shout out to them, great Texas burrito chain. So we were fed, right? But I went and I realized, we did the baby shower, and I had never really been at a baby aisle, so I go and I see all the stuff for babies, and I'm just like cloud 9, right? I mean, Bridget's like, she may not have been 24 hours old. Like, it's like the next day we get up in the morning. She's like, hey, just go get these last few things before we go home with our baby girl. So I go and I'm on a baby aisle and all Reason goes out the door. And I'm like, we need that. We need that. All the creams, all the different diapers, the different sizes of diapers, they grow fast. And I throw it all into the thing, like just piling stuff in. And I'll never forget, I got up to the counter. We had no money. I'm like 22 years old and it's like $286 of stuff we don't need. And I'm just like, just swipe the debit card. And I'm like, get home. And Mary Lisa's like, what is all this crap that you bought? Like, we don't need that for like a year later. I bought onesies, it was just total dumb first time parent. And then if you fast forward, that was our first child. If you fast forward to Timothy, our 8th child, she's like, hey, I'm going to go in. I think I'm having contractions. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And I literally packed nothing. I like showed up at I went in with Mary Lisa and they're like, no, you're having a baby. And even though every time Mary Lisa goes in, it means she's having a baby. I was like, we'll probably have to come back. And so I got stranded with no clothes because the doctor was like, the hospital was like an hour away from our house. So that's just like super prepared and over prepared at the first kid. And then like a moron who's never had a kid before by the 8th kid.
Yeah, that's a good contrast. I like that. I think it's good advice for any first-time parents or first-time expecting parents who might be listening. I know this is much more superficial than what you just described, Sean, but in my family, there hadn't been a baby born for a very long time when our first son was born. And so you don't really know what to expect. The extent of my knowledge of how childbirth worked was like, it has to end by the time the 30-minute TV show is done. Like, this is the childbirth episode of the sitcom. It all happens in like the 22 minutes or whatever. And so I kind of go in, and then it just took forever. It was hour after hour of nothing happening. So if you're a first-time dad, bring like a snack and a fantasy football magazine or something, because there's nothing to do for a lot of it.
I want to say something to the first time dads, and this is incompetent first time dad that I went through, and you have to realize it. And over time, and every mother is going to agree with what I am about to say. The sick, psychotic engineers who design car seats,
yes,
have never had a child. They've never put a child in a car seat. They've never switched the car seat from one section of the car to the other section of car. They are evil and they cannot relate to anyone with kids. I didn't realize that. Okay. The first time, and I'm putting the thing in and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be calm. I'm going to breathe. Life is a gift. We're having a baby. This should be a fun process, putting the, car seat in the car. And then, by the end, you're ready to just shove your car in the car seat off a cliff. Like, I don't want any part of it. But I don't understand it, Steve. We've bought, so many of these because then we'll throw them away because they're dirty, or we'll throw them away and then another baby shows up. But we've gone through 12 different car seats of different generations. They're all awful. Some improve, but they never leave the category of awful. And I don't understand. And I'm a history major. I'm a liberal arts guy. I don't understand anything about engineering, but I look and I appreciate things. I appreciate how easy some things are. I mean, look at all this equipment we have for the podcast. It's not rocket science setting some of this stuff up. And yet they can't. I mean, I do the thing. We landed on the moon and somebody can't make a car seat that is just easy.
The cars now drive themselves. We've got cars that drive themselves.
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned this. This was actually going to be my clueless first-time parenting thing, because we left the hospital and it was sort of this idea of like, oh, they're letting us take this baby home, like just ourselves, like they're giving us this responsibility. Yeah. Kind of that feeling.
You feel like you're stealing your baby.
Yeah. And, I kind of thought I had the car seat thing ready, but I go and it's not quite right. And it's super, I don't know, we're excited to come home and I just couldn't get it right. Like, I don't know. I thought I had it right, but the line is not like this. It's like this. It's, slightly angled off. It has to be parallel to the ground, all of those sorts of things. And we actually it was so stressful. We got into an argument as we're trying to bring our newborn home. And we vowed to each other we would never tell a soul about that argument. So everybody who's listening, the 70% increased listeners to the 40 Days for Life podcast, you're going to have to keep this all a secret that we wound up in our biggest marital argument to date, trying to figure out how to get the doggone car seat in.
But what I want to do, Steve, is tell you and Laura, and this is what I learned, and this is what all you young dads and young moms need to know. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. At the beginning, you do, Steve. You're getting mad at your wife. You're getting mad at the nurse, pushing your wife out in the wheelchair with the newborn. Everybody wonders why the dads are mad in the carport. It's because they just dealt with the car seat. That's why they're mad.
How's this clip go on? The seatbelt's bunching up. I can't fit it in the clip. I can't even reach where the hook is supposed to go.
Those engineers have never done that. They just think it's the smartest way. We do see this with other parts, right? Where you order something through the mail and you're putting it together, like on Christmas Eve or something. You're like, why in the world would they make it like this? But a car seat is different. Like most of the world have had children. And you would just think, I think that those people have never had children. Maybe they hate parents. I'm not going to say they're like part of the abortion industry, but maybe they like resent the fact they could be overpopulation people. And they're like, let's just make it as hard as possible to use these things and people will quit having kids. It feels like that's their attitude because I've gone through generations of these. I've bought the cheapest one. I've bought the most expensive one. It doesn't matter. They're all a pain in the rear. And I will say, Steve, because some of these new dads, I don't want them to get duped and I don't want them to fall into arguments and I don't want, they're going to have one or two okay experiences. It's like golf. Like somebody goes out and maybe they par a hole and they're like, I'm good at golf. This ain't nothing. And it's like their first time playing. You suck at golf. I got to tell you, just because you par a hole in your first time out, that's how golf gets you. It's golf exists to torture people. And so do car seats. And so whenever you get one and it's brand new and it kind of clicks in and you tighten it and that's all you have to do because there's no other kids, that's part of it. Don't fall for the lie. Remember this moment in this podcast. Good job. You got away with one, but it's coming. Your car seat torture is coming. It is inevitable. It is part of the great sacrifice of loving and having children. You got to do it. Protecting our kids is the most important thing, obviously. They know that. They know we will sit there and pull and cringe and curse them to hell because of their product. And in the midst of it, we got to do it. We got to go through the process. It's a car seat. It's to protect our babies. So
everybody talks about mad scientists, but not nearly enough people talk about mad engineers.
I can't tell you exactly. I can't tell you, Steve, how many times like I'll get one in. And the thing is, our van is like perfectly designed for car seats. So is my truck. It's great. The car companies are for sure pro-life. They got the like metal handles now. It's way easier. But the car seat manufacturers themselves are still trying to punish us all. But you'll get one in, and I'm like, they're riding in that seat for the rest of their life. And so I'll just say some absurd statement, but I know some of y'all have feedback on the car seats. Okay. We can't be alone in this. This is destroying families across the country, these car seats. So please email us your car seat torture stories. I know I've just spontaneously thrown some away because they didn't work. And the belt like flips over where it's no longer flat, Steve, and you can't adjust the length of the seat belt where it plugs in. Everybody's been through that. We'll drop it. Clearly some trauma there. Okay. This is a real trauma. And Steve, you're taking over at this point.
All right.
First off, I will say, and I'm not saying this to pick on you, Steve, your kids they're never like really sick, but the normal viruses, whatever goes through the house, your kids are always sick.
I can't figure it out because I like to think we're clean people, hygienic people. I don't know what the deal is, but yeah, there's always something.
You're very clean. You're very clean. Like, I don't get it.
It doesn't make any sense. But this takes us back again to 40 Days for Life Symposium 2016. We fly out to Orlando. We bring the whole family. My parents lived in Florida at the time, so we'll take a couple days at the back end to get together with grandma and grandpa. All good things. Our flight is delayed a little bit. We're like, oh, that's tough. We'll get in late. The kids will be tired. My son, John Paul, again, the one who said, what, are you kidding me? I'm not rude. He falls asleep. This should be a sign that something is wrong. He doesn't fall asleep ever. The kid to this day doesn't need any sleep. I mean, he fell asleep and we're relieved. We're thinking, oh, good. He's getting some sleep. It's not too late. He'll be spry.
You didn't see it as a red flag.
I did not see it as a red flag. I saw it as good news. So it kind of adds to the contrast, right? It's bad enough when your kids get sick. It's doubly bad when you're like, oh, great. I thought this was going to be rough, but they're feeling great. They're rested. No. So we wake up the next morning. I'm emceeing the symposium, and my son throws up all over me and all over some other stuff. And I needed to get new clothes. I needed to go buy like the $150 pair of pants at the hotel store, because where else are you going to go on that at that moment? And was late for the symposium that I was emceeing. And so I would love to bring my family to the symposium, but Laura was like, yeah, I didn't really get to enjoy that one too much, because then she spent the whole symposium with that sort of like, I feel sick too. Is it because I'm sick, or actually I'm just grossed out by what I just experienced and now have sort of a psychosomatic sickness? So that was not an enjoyable day.
Everybody goes through that.
Yeah.
I remember that. And the whole horrible thing about that is that, number one, that can happen to all of us in 3 weeks. It could happen this summer. So that's why it's scary to talk about. The other thing is, when somebody's throwing up, it's the psychology of who's going down next. So Mary Lisa and I had a big trip planned for our anniversary in 2021. We booked the flights and the hotel a year in advance, Steve, because we're like, we're going. The in-laws are committed to take all 8 kids. It was just going to be amazing. COVID was, we were going, it was like, we're going somewhere. And even though I traveled throughout 2020, but you really couldn't go anywhere. So we planned this trip, and we leave in 3 days. Sorry, we leave in a week. And boom, the 3-year-old starts throwing up. Boom, the 15-year-old starts throwing up. Boom. And one by one. So I start psyching myself out, right? And I am like, here's what's going to happen. Like, what is the most positive thing I could think about? They're all going to get sick. Mary Lisa and I won't get sick. We'll all be over it. It's just a little 24-hour bug, 12 hours telling myself that, really 24. And we have a whole week to get through it. We're going on this trip. God would not prevent us from going. I'm trying to use every scenario. So it goes through the house. Mary Lisa gets sick. I'm fine. We still think we can go. I wake up the day before we're supposed to leave, and I'm done. And I get sick maybe 1 out of every 6 times that the family gets sick. So whatever. And I just fall out. We cancel everything, and we cancel this huge trip. And I remember, because Matt, he was like, hey, you excited about your trip? He knew we were going on this trip, our general counsel. And so I call Matt. We're talking about a legal matter, and he's like, hey, you leave tomorrow. That's awesome. I was like,
about that.
Yeah, I said, no, we're not going. I'm sick, and the kids are still sick, and Mary Lisa's still sick, and it's like quiet. And of course, he has 8 kids, and he said, maybe the plane is going to crash.
Oh.
like that was his, which I actually appreciated. Like, he's sitting here going, maybe it's all for good. That was his way of saying it, is by killing off 200 innocent passengers. But the plane is going to crash. So that was really, really bad. But that affected us. I think the funniest thing that ever happened to us with a kid is Bridget was turning 1. So our oldest, we had 2 kids. Bailey was a month and a half old, and Bridget was turning 1. and we have all this family over. It's this over the top like birthday party. You know, we've got cake, we've got everything. Bridget obviously doesn't know what's really going on. And my brother-in-law buys her. Do you remember Dora the Explorer? Who was
Oh, for sure.
Oh, she is huge in 2006, 2007, 2008. We love Dora. Bridget loved Dora. My brother-in-law gave her a Dora like fold-out chair, and she plops herself in it. We're all like, "You look so cute." We're taking her photo. She looks around and just spews throw up everywhere. And so then I use that, like I die laughing, and of course Mary Lisa like runs over, and I look at my brother-in-law Tanner, and I'm like, "Thanks for the gift, Uncle Tanner. That was great." She obviously really liked it. And Bridget got really, really sick. But
those just the stomach bugs just come out of the blue, right? Like you got a cold and you've got some notice, like, okay, there's a sore throat, there's a sniffle, like, okay, you got some time to build up. You can be having a great time at your kid's birthday party, and then bam, it's just all over, 0 to 60.
Yeah. And that one, Bridget just kept throwing up and kept throwing up and kept throwing up. And my father-in-law, who's a doctor who never gives medical advice because it's all like, oh, don't overreact. But he's like, I think you need to take her in. So she ends up going to the hospital for 3 or 4 days.
Oh my goodness.
It was awful. They give her like an IV, and she just got this horrible virus that struck her. But Bailey was 6 weeks old. So we have a newborn, and Mary Lisa, of course, is not going to leave Bridget's side. So we're like transporting breast milk and bringing Bailey up there so she can kind of eat with Mary Lisa, but not be exposed to Bridget. And that was like baptism by fire of early dad sick kids, because we had a 5-week-old or 6-week-old, and then we had a 1-year-old who was really sick. So it was, looking back, like I wasn't stressed. I think I'd be more stressed about that now because we have so many kids. But anyways, that was funny looking back, and we laugh about that a lot in our house. All right, Steve, what do you do when your kids first learn to escape?
Yeah, they're escaping their crib. We've had kids that, this is weird. I hope this isn't that weird. Hopefully somebody else can bail me out and say they've had this happen too. But one of our kids would just like take off the pajamas and just run around. So that was kind of wild. And so we had to.
It's like California, it's just
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Governor Newsom, bringing this into my home.
Streaking is now legal in California. There you go.
So we had to go to what my wife Laura calls martial law, and that involves. I don't have a great story to go along with this. Maybe there's some tips for others who are struggling with it, and if you got tips, by all means. I don't have this going on right now, but you never know. We'd put the pajamas on backwards and then safety pin them so they couldn't reach to get out of that. And then we would take, if they escaped the crib, we would take the crib and turn it around so the high side was facing out. And then we actually, at one point for one of our kids, this is really where martial law came into effect. Just clear everything that you could make a mess of. The shelves are cleared. All the books are gone. The stuffed animals are put away. The night lights, everything that could be just like taken and thrown somewhere was gone. So it was like you were in some kind of, I don't know, like sterile room. There's nothing there except for the crib and no trouble that you could possibly get into. But I think you said you had a good story, so I'm eager to hear about this one.
Yeah, it's right off of that. Timothy, 2 years old, our only like screamer, mad. All of our kids have been very laid back, and he was a sweet kid till he was 1. He turned 1, and he just, this like temper and he's like OCD. He'll probably be like a world-renowned brain surgeon or something. Okay, everything has to be a certain way. He's little, so I think there's a little Napoleon going on. Okay, he's really little. He gets really mad really fast, or he'll be really sweet. And all the other kids are like, he's so cute, and he is, but he's a little crazy. So he's having this temper tantrum thing, and we did what you did. He kept escaping out of the crib. So we turn it around, and it's huge, and he's little. And he gets so mad that he throws himself out of the crib, lands on the ground. We can hear it. And I look at Mary Lisa, I'm like, there's no way that was his thud. Like that's
like
one
Ocean's
of the other
11.
Kids. It was like Ocean's 11. I said, there's no way that's him. It was like the scene out of Jaws. Like you put 3 barrels in them and Jaws can't go underwater, and even Jaws went underwater. And that's what I said to Mary Lisa. I was like, you got 3 barrels in them.
Tell you can't with 3 barrels on him, not with 3 he can't.
And there's no way he's getting out of that crib. And he did. He's Jaws. And he got out. And it actually was good because he won. I can't build like Wrigley Field as a crib where it traps him in. I mean, there was nothing else to do. So the philosophy was, if we made him sleep with his big brother, sort of under supervision, because he worships Declan and he gets to go to a big boy bed, that'll solve it. And it did.
Okay.
So he won. We got rid of the crib. He moved in with Declan. They started sleeping, together, and he stayed in bed and he never gets up. And so it was literally his he wasn't crying like from the pain of hitting the floor. He was like upset and screaming when he launched himself out. I have no idea how he did it.
That's where you want to put him back so you can just like watch through the crack of the door.
Like you could be a pole vaulter or something. So when he threw himself out and he hit the ground, that he didn't cry because of the pain. And that's when we're like, oh man, you're like middle linebacker crazy. So yeah, he won. I mean, it's a battle of wills, and he sacrificed his body and he got an upgrade. So I mean, there was nothing else to do. So that was unbelievable. And none of our other kids would have ever done that. Okay. All right. Little disclaimer. When your kids are bad at church, okay, mine is you go ahead, Steve. Because first off, there are annoying kids at church and parents will never take them out. And this is one of those points, Steve, where we can't say, and you know who you are.
Because they don't. No,
that's the problem.
The only people who don't know they are is them.
Everybody else knows who they are. They don't. Then you get, the lady, some kids like, in the middle of mass or church service, and somebody like glares at them, get your kid out of here. But my philosophy, because somebody always gets emotional about this, the priest told me I needed to take my kid out. And I know there are probably some priests and preachers that have done that and they're out of line, but it's not the majority. If a priest tells me to take my kid out because he's too loud, I'm going to be embarrassed. That's not what we're talking about. So Steve, give us an example of a Carlin kid somehow being bad in mass. I can't even imagine it.
Yeah. Catherine, who's kind of the wild one in our family. They're all wild in their different way.
I'm getting the girl vibe, but the Carlin girls aren't messing around.
Yeah. They're just like, this is going to be some guy's crazy girlfriend someday. Man, your girlfriend is crazy. That's for sure going to happen. But she was throwing a fit and then she went limp. Or then you've got the runners who the usher's coming through the collection plate and it's like a screen pass where you can no longer get them and they're halfway down the aisle beforehand. I one time was reading and we had a runner. Laura had her hands occupied with one of the kids, and Benny, our youngest, went running for me as I was doing like the letter to the Ephesians up at the lectern. All these things are there, but we've got some of the angry parents too. I'm actually going to turn this in a not so funny direction, but like a little bit of a heartwarming story. Actually, this is
great.
I'm turning over a new leaf. It may be January, but I still have a heart. And there's a lady at our church who's just nasty. Any sound from a kid, she's going to be mean. I don't know who she is. I specifically made a point. Laura encountered her at daily mass regularly, and I made a point of not figuring out who she was so I wouldn't be harboring uncharitable, hateful thoughts in my heart while I was trying to worship the Lord. But Peter knew who she was, and so he would be super nice to her. He's 15 now, and he ran into her one time. We weren't around. He ran into her and he just greeted her, and he was so kind to her. He said, I just want to try to cheer her up a little bit. And you know what she did? She said, you know what? I've been so nasty to your family, and I'm so sorry. My kids left the church, and I'm just taking it out on families whose kids are still in the church. And it was just kind of a wonderful moment because I've got all these nasty thoughts, and my son went and made things right. He reconciled.
That's awesome. That is a great story. That's a really heartwarming story.
I'm proud of him.
No, you should be proud. Shout out to Peter. And that's a good suggestion. If you have a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old that can go be nice to the mean lady or the mean man, goes a long way. Good for her too, for saying that. That's awesome. That's a great story. Mine is, I'm not picking on him. He's too young to listen to the podcast, but we're going to go back to Timothy. It's not, it just, I guess somehow goes into his psychosis. This is why I think he's going to be like some genius, I don't know, astronaut or brain surgeon. This happened for a year. Now he's fine. But for a whole year, we go to mass, we get in the pew, mass starts. He starts screaming. So I take him out. I'm quick. I've got a fast trigger, Steve. You start screaming, you're out. Okay. If you're kind of making noises, we'll kind of manage it. But if it's like during the gospel reading or the sermon or something, it's distracting, you're out. But if you start screaming, you're gone. And going into the back with dad is bad. If you have to go outside, it's really bad. There's going to be major consequences. So for like a year, Timothy starts screaming. I don't go into the cry room because when I get to the back of the church behind the last pew, he stops and he pays attention to everything and he watches everything. I hold him. And as I creep up to like go to communion, he starts screaming. It's like he's like a back pew Christian, but he wants to be like not even in the back pew. That was the only philosophy I could get. And then, as you know, Steve, I have to stand behind like a pillar or something because he can't see Mary Lisa. He can't see mom. If he sees mom, then it's endless mommy, and we can't do that because the punishment is he's cut off from mom. He made noise. He was making noise. Mom was holding him. He had everything he wanted in life, which is mom. And then he forfeited that. So he can't even see mom in the back or he'll have like a psychotic meltdown. So our
church went to, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I was gonna say that just ended one day. Like, and I haven't had to do that in like a year.
We had a real break in our family's favor when my church went to every Sunday is Donut Sunday, because for a 2, 3, maybe even 4-year-old, there is no better hostage that you can take than you're about to lose your donut. And you don't like to do it, but I have yet to find something that has been more effective than taking away the donuts. I will say, this is not good advice for church, but I have made these episodes that our kids all have from time to time a little more tolerable as a parent by I'll dole out timeout time in 2-minute increments and pretend I'm a hockey team going on the power play. That's a good time. And I also do this thing that I call tantrum selfies, where if kids having a tantrum, I'll pick them up and I'll do kind of like the selfie thing with the phone, and they're making an angry face. And we'll if you're what this is where you really got to watch the video podcast, because you'll get the great visuals of a Carlin family tantrum selfie.
That's not a bad idea. I'm the opposite with the timeouts. It's a bit of a problem. I'll get mad, rightly so in my own opinion, if somebody's misbehaving and they go to timeout and I close the door and they're like crying, and I forget they're there, and like 45 minutes later, like one of
that's on them though. Act right, and you won't get forgotten about.
I'm gonna get Mary Kate. I was like, oh, I forgot she's there. She's like sitting on her own bed with like the tears in her eyes, and I'm like, it's like Shawshank Redemption. A month, you know. It's like, I didn't mean to put you down here that long. I'm like the warden. Okay. When your kids are potty training,
it's like Sherman's March to the Sea.
Would really be great if this just happened naturally. Like your fingernails grow, teething. I think I have issues with God for teething. The kids are like being tortured. It tortures the parents. Why can't they just grow in like fingernail? You know. Anyway, that's questions for eternity. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna win this one. An unidentified carny child. We went into this beautiful, large Catholic church in New York. Famous priest was there. I met him. I was there for 40 Days for Life, and I visited with the Sisters of Life. We lived in Virginia at the time. We took all the kids. So it was 4 kids at the time, the oldest of whom was, I don't know, 8. This was not the 8-year-old. So we're potty training one of the younger kids. And Mass is about to start. Sorry, Mass has started. And this, one of my boys, I'll say that, I got to go to the bathroom. No, we just took you. You're not going. Talk about a stupid dad, right? And he's potty trained. I think he's potty trained, right? Like, I'm confident that we've completed the process. Hasn't had an accident in a while. We're good. And he lets it fly. Okay. And it's number 2, Steve.
Uh-oh.
We're surrounded by the wonderful Sisters of Life. They're either not noticing or they are not saying anything. Either way, they're like all saints. We love.
You're not sure which one is worse at that point. Like, if it's kind of like, it's just like kind of bad. They're kind of looking around trying to figure out what it is, but it's either, it could be so bad that, yeah.
And this is getting like unbearable. We mentioned Shawshank Redemption, like when he crawls through the end of the sewer. It's borderline that. And so I look to my go-to, which is, of course, the great Mary Lisa Carney. She will figure this out. And so we're like hand signaling, and I make him walk down there, and Mary Lisa's like, we used all the diapers and the wipes. And so I like mouth like change of clothes, and she's like, no. Oh. So we are now Tom Hanks in Castaway. We are stranded alone on the island without a diaper or wipe or clothes. And it
might be Blair Witch Project.
It's Blair Witch. It gets worse. We're like passing him around, I guess, to try to move the smell. I mean, I don't want to get too graphic. and I actually wanted to hear this priest preach. But that all went out the window. So I feel this tap on the shoulder. We want your family to bring up the gifts up the aisle, the bread and the wine. So in the Catholic Church, some family always brings up the gifts. I really don't like when they bring up the gifts, but anyways. And I'm about to say no. And like one of my other kids and the Sisters of Life are like, that would be great. The beautiful family could bring up the gifts. And I'm like, you have no idea how badly you don't want us to bring up the gifts. So, I can't get into the details of it, Steve, because this is a family podcast, but we're managing the volume of the accident and going up, and it's one of those, like, it just kept going downhill. Mass ends. These people from New York had like seen me on EWTN or something. They're like asking me all these questions. I get in all these conversations. Mary Lisa wants to leave. I want to leave. We want to drive somewhere, get clothes, get diapers, and act like this day never happened ever again. And that was the longest Mass in the history of the world.
I'll go with that. I don't have a story that's that good or dramatic. I'll just say Laura's got this like 3-day potty training system. As a rule, systems and raising kids, I don't do systems with raising kids at all. I just don't. But she bought into it. It worked. I was wrong. She was right. It's fine. But those 3 days are, as I described a moment ago, Sherman's March to the Sea. It is just complete and total disaster. And in our experience, Sean, maybe we're just lucky. We haven't had the challenges and the pitfalls of potty training have for us not been so much the inopportune accident like you just described. It's been like once they start potty training, it's all that they want to do. So we decided we're going to do this 3 days over Thanksgiving break because like I'm obviously off of work. I can lend a hand with the littler kids the littler child who needs it or the older one or whatever. And so we're driving out for Thanksgiving dinner at my in-laws. It's an hour away and we stopped 5 times for potty breaks on the way. That to me is the frustrating part of the potty training experience. Definitely not as bad as what you had to deal with, but I always think that's the underrated difficulty of the experience.
I have some good advice that came from Mary Lisa and that we adjusted. So once Bridget and Bailey got old enough, Bailey, I think, could convince somebody to do anything, and she's not intimidated by anything. She's 16 now. So, I mean, Bailey was like rearranging our pantry when she was 4, and she was good at it. Like, she just has to be productive in doing something. So Mary Lisa said on these last 4 or 5 kids, I said, you know, when are we going to potty train or something? She's like, oh, we're going to do it in the summer. We're going to do it Christmas break. I was like, why don't we do it now? Which is like, why don't you do it now? Because I'm not going to potty train because I'm useless with that for sure. Other than her saying, take the kid. So Mary Lisa said, I'm not doing it. I'm paying Bailey $50 to do it. And whether it takes her a day or it takes her 3 months, she gets $50. So Bailey, like, it was like challenge accepted. And Timothy, who we've picked on a lot, 1.5 days potty train. Okay. So stuff like that, he's great.
That's awesome.
Taking a shower, putting on his shoes. He's meticulous. He's OCD, but he just may lose it at any moment. But he was easy to potty train. She's had a couple where literally it was a 48-hour turnaround and Bailey got $50, which we're happy for, right? It's like a win-win. And she's like, easiest money I've ever made. But I've said that to a few people and they're like, can you like fly Bailey to my house?
Yeah.
Just for like a week, you know, but that's, if you have an older kid who's like super type A, patient and organized, you may just want to pay him off. I mean, then you're not even dealing with it.
In the words of the great Randy Moss, straight cash, homie.
That's right. Oh, man. After you potty train a couple of kids, though, if you can outsource it to a trusted source, it's gold. Okay. This is the final one. When you travel with your kids, Steve, I know what yours is. I got to hear it. You go first.
This is actually my favorite story of those that I've told today. We took in 2021 the Great American Road Trip. COVID was over, or at least it was supposed to be over.
Official title.
Great American Road Trip. We headed west. We went through Kansas City, had some barbecue. We went to the Rocky Mountains. We came back through South Dakota, all in our van. It was awesome. But we got to Colorado and we wanted to go to Pikes Peak, which I think is one of my favorite places in the country. It's where the America the Beautiful was inspired, the lyrics to it. I love Pikes Peak. You take a train up the mountain to like, I don't know, 14, just shy of 15,000 feet altitude. And so this is kind of a highlight. So we're going to do it right away, right? Without altitude acclimation. And on top of that, it's still kind of the COVID time, right? So I was like, you know what? The national parks are weird about this stuff. I don't think there's going to be any restrooms on top of the mountain. So nobody drink anything in the morning. And apparently dehydration is not something that's very good for altitude sickness. So we're on the train on the way up. Benny, our 1-year-old, is in my wife's arms and he falls asleep, which doesn't happen. By this time, after the Florida experience, we knew enough to know that the unexpected falling asleep was not good. He falls asleep. We get off the train and you can imagine there's a platform there and the train, doors open and everybody's just, gushing out of it. My 8-year-old, John Paul, he gets out, takes 3 steps onto the platform and lays down. Just lays down. So we're like, okay, this is not good. So we're trying to figure out what to do. Laura's like, okay, I'll take him and I'll take Benny to the medic. Like you run around on the mountain, like with the other kids and they can see the sights, get some photos, all that sort of thing. So Catherine, at this point, 3 years old, finds a boulder on the side of the mountain. She gets up on it, climbs up on it, lays down, makes it a bed and takes a nap. So this time I'm like, okay, I'm taking her and I'm taking the rest of the kids.
On a rock.
Yeah. We're all going to the medical center at this point. So I'm going to find Laura. So I pick him up. We're all heading over and I get the altitude sickness. So I get dizzy and I'm kind of like staggering around. By the time we make it to the medic, my whole family is laid out on the floor of the visitor center, sleeping with oxygen monitors on their bodies. Everybody was okay, but I cannot promise you that a good time was had by all.
Oh my word. The Great American Trip was the Great American Disaster.
I'm going to put the Boulder picture up because it is funny as heck. She's all bundled up. She looks cute as can be, big old cheeks, just taking a nap on a rock.
She's like one of the Desert Fathers, 1,800 years ago. Just like, I'm going to go, I need nothing but our Lord. I'm going to go lay on a rock. Oh my word. That's brutal. Okay. Mine is, I think, just a philosophy. And of course, riding in the car on a long trip with a bunch of kids is awful, and people are unwilling to admit that. You have less awful times. You have super fun moments on every trip. You're playing a game, something funny happens, whatever. But overall, it's going to be rough. Okay. If you have a wide, spread of children, which I do. So here are some philosophical points that I have on this. Number one, volume wins. You are in charge of the volume of the movie. You are in charge of the volume of the music. And due to technology now, the last 30 years, you can fade the speakers to the back. So if there's fighting, if there's screaming when nothing's wrong, you got to crank the music. Now, I think this is a big dad thing because Mary Lisa is amazed and somewhat disturbed that I can just zone out screaming children when I'm driving. I can't do it if I'm a passenger, so I always drive. And this is like a theme of this, me dumping things on Mary Lisa. But so Mary Lisa is listening to the kids, which I, as a man, have the gift of being able to just not listen to someone. So I'm just zoned out. Okay, so volume wins. Here's a big bonus of traveling with a bunch of kids is they always have to go to the bathroom, and so do I. So that's always a plus. I'm like, it's just Mary Lisa and I driving somewhere. I'm gonna have to do the subtle, like, honey, you look thirsty,
Yeah.
But we should probably get something to eat. No, I'm good. Dang it. Okay, so zone out, and when it gets really bad and Mary Lisa is stressed, I start singing Jesus Take the Wheel by Carrie Underwood to Mary Lisa, and that always makes her laugh. Okay, so my funny story. This this is last spring break. We are last springtime sometime. We are driving through the middle of nowhere, East Texas, to go home for my 40th birthday, Steve. This is last March. And my parents and siblings were throwing a party, and we're in the middle of nowhere. And Declan, I'm from East Texas. Mary Lisa's from East Texas. We're pointing out like awesome catfish places, Declan, my 8-year-old, he's like, I got to go to the bathroom. And he's not a false alarmer, but we can't stop anywhere. We're in the woods. I mean, we're on a 2-lane road. Anyways, and he's serious, and he doesn't joke around. So we're like, okay. So I look at Mary Lisa and I'm like, look, I'm from East Texas. You're from East Texas. Do we have a Gatorade bottle? She starts laughing, and immediately the teenage girls are like, he is not peeing in our car. This is not happening. I'm like, girls, we can pull over, okay? And they're like, that's not happening either. So we do have a Gatorade bottle, and Declan's now excited. He gets to pee in a bottle, okay? And we pass it back. He's around his older brother, so he's like, all right, he's not helping him, but he's like, he's not sitting next to one of the girls, which would be tragic. We would never do. So I give a command to the car, Steve, which I think every guy can understand, which is be quiet. Okay. Because it's going to require some concentration. Which
focus.
8-year-old boys have none, but if you got to go, you got to go. So, this is all TMI. So it's quiet. He's grinning Declan is a trooper. He's always in a good mood.
This is not supposed to be an enjoyable experience.
He's back there like, I gotta tell my friends about this on Monday. I mean, you can tell he's totally into it. He thinks he's cool. We just hear this like little boy voice. It's not coming out. So, apparently the circumstances were too much of a distraction. So we pull over on the side of the road, and I was like, you walk down to the ditch, and he looks around, he smiles, and he, takes care of business. So that was, I think, the funniest travel thing. We always have a lot of Timothy just screaming down the interstate for 2 hours, but that's like a common thing to pick on him more. But yeah, the roadside, I know people will be offended by that, but I mean, it is when you got to go. And the bottle thing, Steve, I haven't personally participated in that, but I have been in vehicles where that has been quite successful.
Okay, well, good. We won't do a whole episode on it, though.
I noticed you did not say, oh, yeah, me too.
Oh, no, I have, in fact, had that experience with one of my children. That's where I will be merciful and not say which one, but yeah.
Okay.
And I also hope my wife will not listen to this episode because she'll flip if she finds that out.
Declan will be proud that I shared this on the podcast because he's just like, yeah, I almost got to pee in a bottle in the car. You know, I mean, it's like he won a gold medal.
22, looking for his first job out of college, putting that on the resume.
Yeah, hopefully he's probably about 4 years away from being really offended that I shared that on the podcast. So we may have to take it down. But as a reminder, as we close out this podcast, hopefully you have your own stories. Give us your feedback also. If this was helpful, if it was hurtful, if it was funny, if it was offensive, we want to know it all. Email us at podcast@40daysforlife.com, podcast@40daysforlife.com. And as a reminder, we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, the 40 Days for Life campaign starts on February the 22nd. But if you would like to lead a campaign, applications are still open, thanks to CVS and Walgreens getting into the abortion business. So go to 40daysforlife.com and find those, find your location if you want to volunteer. And if you want to lead, you'll see the application on that. Thank you again as we roll through January. And January is not over, obviously, as the release of this podcast, but we had a record month. We're up 70%. So thank you for all the feedback. Please do give us good, bad, and ugly feedback so we can improve this podcast as a resource to educate, at times entertain, and inform you about all of the wonderful and dark things going on in our culture right now. So be sure to rate, review, share this podcast. Thank you, Steve. And thank you to our beautiful wives and our children for enduring all of these experiences. And I'm sure more to come. Praise God for that. So we will see you next time. God bless you.